to another edition of Authority Marketing Live. I'm Melanie Hirschhorn. I'm a book marketing strategist for nonfiction authors and children's book authors, and I am on a literally one-woman mission to help authors share their message with the world, because one of the saddest things is when you write a book and nobody knows about it. So I'm trying to make that never happen again. Today, I have a fantastic guest who I have known for a little while now, and I'm really excited to bring Terry Modica on. And we're going to be talking about her book, and it is called 30 Days to the Father's Heart. So without further ado, here she is. Hi, Terry.
Hi, everybody.
Thanks so much for being here.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
My pleasure. Okay, so 30 Days to the Father's Heart. How did you get the inspiration to write this book?
It really began, I would say, over 40 years ago. I was a young adult, newly married, and beginning to analyze my relationship with my father from an adult perspective, or I wasn't a parent yet, so that adds another spin to it. But from the perspective of, I'm not living under his roof anymore. And I'm married to this wonderful man who treats me different than my dad. When I was dating him, I was even deliberately looking for somebody who was different than my father.
Oh, wow.
Because in high school psychology class, they talked about how, girls end up marrying somebody like dear old dad. And I did not want that. And so here I was married to somebody who was quite different, and I was glad for that. But I was now starting to develop spiritually and independently, and was starting to examine, why did I want to marry somebody so different than my dear old dad? And the as some of it was rather obvious. He always seemed angry. One of the first things that I learned from my husband is how to hug, because my parents, both of my parents, but especially my dad, were they weren't huggers, and when they did hug, it was cold and stiff. And so my husband, he came from an Italian family, a big family, all warm and huggy family. And so I realized that I needed to make some changes in myself that had been influenced by my parents without me realizing. You grow up and you think it's normal, whatever you're growing up with. You see your friends' parents and you think, oh, that would be great if my dad were like that, or I'm glad my dad's not like that one, whatever. But it doesn't really click until you start to try to become your full potential as an adult. And when my husband and I would be at gatherings, meet up with friends or something, and we'd hug each other. The friends would hug, and eventually some bold friend said, Terry, you don't hug very well. You should learn from Ralph. That's my husband.
Wow.
So I said to Ralph, please teach me how to hug. And yeah, so that was one of the turning point moments in my life where I really began to examine my relationship with my father and why I wasn't the way I wanted to be. And as that was starting to evolve, I had a spiritual director, and she told me that all of this was also affecting my relationship with God. And, how could I imagine God the Father as a warm, huggable, loving parent, or father figure, authority figure, if I didn't feel that from if I didn't like my human father because he wasn't warm to me, or if it's like I learned from her, my spiritual director, that we project unto God what humans have been like for us. And so my father, he wasn't warm, but he was good at punishing. and he was not a physical abuser, but he was angry a lot. And I never felt that he listened to me or understood me. There were many times when I disagreed with him, and legitimately so. Uh, for example, there was one time when my best friend said, "Let's go bowling." And I had never been bowling before. So I went and asked my parents for permission to go bowling. I think I was in middle school at that time.
Mhm.
And my father said no. And I'm
Okay.
like, "Why not?" And he said, "Because I said so." And
Ah,
I'm like, "There's got to be more reason than that." And I was like, by now at this point in my life, I was like, come on, how do I make this man understand me? How do I have a reasonable conversation? If he gives me a good reason not to go, like, we're at the same time that you want to go bowling, we're actually going to go visit somebody or something like that. We got other plans. That's one thing, but he didn't have any answer. And
mhm.
I started to cry, and I was like, trying to explain. I was trying to use words, find words, and my words never sank in. Um, Eventually, after maybe an hour or something like that, he changed his mind, and he admitted that the reason why he said no is because he had tried bowling when he was younger and didn't like it. So he was trying to save me from not liking it.
Interesting. Okay, so
And
how has this is almost roller coaster like relationship with him? How does that inform what's in the book? What's the book
well,
about?
that's actually one of the stories I put in the book.
Mhm.
And because of that, that's an example of how I felt like my father didn't listen to me. So
Mhm.
imagine what my prayer life was like if
Mhm.
I didn't think God was listening to me. And so over time, I became a spiritual director for others. I helped some people with inner healing. I learned how to do that. And I developed a ministry of helping people find God as he truly is, not as our misconceptions tell us he is. And from that, I was over the years getting lots of feedback of people who were really, I could see that they were having trouble in their relationships with God, and understanding that he really loves them and he's not just there to punish them, or that he's safe, because a lot of people have been physically abused and sexually abused, and God doesn't seem safe if you've had that background.
Mhm.
Love doesn't seem safe if you've had that background. And so, in ministering to people, listening to people, I realized that they would benefit from my journey and from what I learned on my journey. So, back in about 2018, I started writing things down, and it took about 2 years to put out the book.
Mhm. Show it there.
Ta-da, there's
Okay.
the book. Um, and it's a book that is basically like being guided by a spiritual director through with exercises to do
Mhm.
to help you realize, yes, your father and mother, any authority figure, uh, where they failed to be the perfect parent. They were a bad representation, and we do the same thing for our kids, and any kids that we might teach in school or whatever. And everybody looks for the perfect parent to guide them, and no human being can be that. And some of them are way worse than others, but even the best of them fail at it. And so everybody has some handicap, some misconceptions about what God's fatherhood is really all about. And so my book, ta-da,
30 days to the Father's heart, and you can find out more right here.
there you go. That goes through layer after layer after layer. It's called 30 days, but it's not to be done in 1 month.
Oh, that's good to know. Okay.
Yeah,
Why
it's
why 30 days?
because there's 30 you think of a day as a step on the journey,
Hmm.
a step forward, and a lot of steps when you really make significant progress because you're really digging up something that needs inner healing or processing in some way. You need to take more than, just sitting down for 20 minutes to read a chapter and then the next day read another chapter for 20 minutes.
Mhm.
So it's a journey. And the 30 days is really 30 steps, but steps just doesn't sound right. But because a day, when you look at your past,
Mhm.
it's years in the making to where you are now. And it just the book is all about just helping you make the progress that you've been wanting to make and reach your full potential in relationship to who God really is.
Okay, thank you so much. So, what kind of marketing have you been doing for your book?
Well, the beginning of it, while I was writing the book, I actually, through my ministry, which is Good News Ministries at gnm.org, I've been doing a lot of writing since 1999 that people have been receiving by email. And uh, so I had this huge following, and I invited people to preview the chapters as I was writing them in draft form and give me their input and give me their stories.
Mm.
So the book is filled with not only my stories, but a lot of other people's stories too, to
Mhm.
help resonate with all different types of readers. And the so they were the first people to hungrily buy up the book then when it was out and buy copies for their friends. So that was where I had my biggest marketing. And
Mhm.
then of course I kept promoting it to that it's coming out, it's coming out, it's coming out to all of my followers on the website. And so there was initially a big pretty good response.
How about now, though? We're how long out? How long ago was the book published?
It got published. Let's see this. Yeah, just a little over a year ago,
Okay.
in November in 2021.
All right, so you're still promoting it, though.
Well, yes, I took a little hiatus from it, unfortunately, because just after the book came out, my mother went into the hospital,
Sorry.
and Ralph and I became caregivers for my parents, which that's a challenge when you had that kind of a growing up relationship with them.
Yeah.
We actually took them into our home and made space for them. My father died in 2020 at the end of that, and in the midst of COVID and not being able to have visitors in the nursing home and stuff. That was not nice. But my mother, just when the book came out, went into the hospital. My attention went to taking care of her more than I usually did. And uh, then then we had we were making I was starting to get back into gear and trying to catch up in my daily ministry activities. And then my mother was back in the hospital for something else, and then my husband went into the hospital, and then he got an infection from that hospital visit and went back in, and then he got COVID from that hospital visit and gave it to me. And
But you're back. You're back.
finally back.
And let me ask you a question. Having to be a caretaker for your parents, did that inspire another book?
Actually, it helped inspire this book.
Okay.
And one of the readers of this book said to me, Terry, now you need to write one on mother wounds, healing mother wounds, because this one's all about father wounds. Although I emphasize throughout the book that this can be applied to any parental, any authority figure in your life.
Mhm.
But she said she would love, because she has mother wounds, that she's read this book. The book has helped her, but she'd like a little bit more focus on mother wounds. The daughter to mother relationship
Yeah, yeah.
is something unique that carries with it certain kinds of opportunities and baggage. And I'm still processing that. My mother is still alive, and she's in a, uh, she had to go back to the hospital a third time a couple of months ago, and she's in a rehab center now. So it's been very tough times for her and for me. I've been sick while she's been sick, and that's been tough on her and tough on me and my feelings of, how guilty should I feel that I'm not tending to her every need like I used to. And when my father was in the hospital and was in the nursing home, I would take her every week to visit him. I was always on the phone to make sure he was getting the best of care. And I feel like I've fallen short in doing that with my mother, far short. And that bothers me a lot. But I've just been, because after I had COVID, I ended up getting a disease of parasites in my intestines that were brutal. And that was in September and October, and that will take about a year to fully recover from.
My goodness.
So it's I have fatigue. I still have some intestinal issues, and I atrophied my muscles while I was bedridden. So I'm in physical therapy. So it's like I don't have time to spend with my mother, and that, between a daughter and a mother, that relationship, that's a real challenge.
Yeah.
And I haven't figured it all out yet. With my husband's help, I've made a lot of progress in gaining new insights and knowing about setting boundaries and what's a healthy boundary, and where does a healthy boundary separate from being selfish, and yeah, that will have to go into a book someday.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Terry, for being here. I really appreciate it. You can grab a copy of 30 Days to the Father's Heart. And if you want to learn more about Terry's ministry, you can go to gnm.org. Terry Modica, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thanks for having me.